Hello and welcome. If you've ever heard this quote, and I absolutely love it, and it's so true and powerful, by Maya Angelou, there is not greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And have you ever had that feeling that just something inside you is burning and has to get out? Well, that's your soul telling you you have a story to share. And my guest here today is the perfect person to show you how to do that. And she has been up to some incredible new things, sharing her story as well. And today I really want to focus on here our beautiful guest, entrepreneur Katie Soy, and the power of storytelling. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Katie. Now, our incredible interviewee, my dear friend Katie Soy, is an author, storytelling consultant, and founder of the Story Collective. She helps entrepreneurs and organizations grow by teaching them to see, then use their personal stories to integrate storytelling with their brand. And the other day we had a little discussion and I asked her, what's her sixth sense? And I think her sixth sense and superpower is that she sees stories. And once you get to know her, you'll probably agree with me too. So, and Katie believes that the personal storytelling is the key to brand authenticity, stronger connections with those that are drawn to us and our mission. And recently, she's not just, she's been an author for a long time, but recently she published The Firefly and the Storm, the children's audiobook. And you do not want to miss this audiobook, people. And I actually find it interesting, and I don't have kids. I bought it for my nieces and nephews. And she's also the founder of the Story Collective. And storytelling has been a constant thread in her resume tapestry, but I'm going to let her share that little bit with you. But when she is not working on stories, she's spending time with her sweet husband, her gentleman, traveling the world when it's not during the pandemic. And she is a proud bookworm. And let's not forget another reason I love her. She is obsessed with Harry Potter, all things Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and so much more. And without further ado, please let me welcome my guest today, Katie Soy.
Hi, Ellie. Oh my gosh, what an introduction. Thank you. That was wonderful. You and I have been friends for many, many years, and you've really been, sort of a front row witness to the journey and a lot of the things you were just mentioning on my resume. And so I'm just so grateful for your friendship and your encouragement. And I'm so glad that you had me here today. So thank you.
Thank you. And I couldn't put the number on how long we've known each other. I think it's around 7-8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I do know the first time I visually met you was on Periscope.
Yes, back in the Periscope days. Yes, and then we met in person. Well, I think we knew each other for a couple of years before we met in person. I think it was in 2015 or 2016 at an event in California, and it was just like love at first sight, physically too.
Just absolutely adore you. I have to tell you, everyone, it isn't so often that you get to meet someone where you can fully be yourself, like not even the pretty parts. I mean, we all have the darker parts of us that need a little light shed on it. And sometimes Katie was always that person that I could talk to and share those stories, and just in her allowing me that space to share the story could come out. You're so good at this. The story could come out and that light could shine on it, and then it no longer would have this hold on me. So I really so appreciated for her for that. And it's just so rare. And then we could still laugh about silly things and just gush over Harrison Ford. So
yes, no, and I feel like that's such a sweet thing to say. That means so much because, as you know, with my story and who I am and what I do, that's one of the sweetest things that you could say. To be a safe space for other people's stories, I feel like that's one of my missions in life. And I feel like that's, we need those safe spaces so we can share, be comfortable sharing our stories with the rest of the world, right? And so you have to be able to have your group to be able to share that with, to gain that confidence and gain your footing and that foundation to then go out and go, no, this is who I am, right? To your friends first and then the world. So that's super sweet. And I feel the same way about you. I can always, share with no fear of, is this too much or too heavy or too dark, or is she going to judge, right? There's never that, with us. And I love that. But I was going to say, I feel like I haven't seen you very often in person because we don't live in the same area. But every time I've seen you, it's just been like a giddy reunion. Because I remember when we met in California at those events for a couple of years in a row. And then I think I did this crazy road trip from Phoenix to LA area in 2018. And we were like, we have to make it happen. I have to see you. And that was another, just like we had the best morning, just like walking around and just talking. Like it was just, there was nothing special going on other than just getting to see you, because you're such a light. You're so enchanting. You're such a light. There's so much love with you and everybody that you're around. And every time we're together, I'm just like, oh, it was an Ellie moment.
Oh, you're so sweet. Which is really funny that you guys, the day that I went to meet her, she had these incredible transformational stories that she has gone through. And since the time I've met you, Katie, you've transformed and transformed and transformed and transformed. We were accountability partners in one of Shalene Johnson's groups. We had our fellow mentor that she put us together, and I have no idea how she must have had this ding. Yes. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better accountability partner, because I think most of the time we chatted, it was not about what we were supposed to be talking about, but it was about important things,
right,
that people need to share and discover, so that they feel open and they feel connected. So they feel open to say, hey, I'm about to take this big risk. And at the time you were in the process of publishing your first book.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to come back around to that. But I think it's funny because yes, several years later you did the road trip, and she had a little window of time, and I said, well, I'm going to drive down there and meet you. Mm-hmm. So we met up, and we literally just had Laguna Beach coffee and walked around.
Yeah, it was the most fun. It was like one of the most fun mornings I've ever had, because it was just like with you doing nothing. It doesn't matter.
I know, it doesn't matter. It was just, there's just some people, you don't have to have something planned to enjoy time with them. And honestly, it felt like no time had passed.
I know.
Like we could just go back to where we left off and continue. And again, you're maybe it's because you're such a good storyteller. I just was dripping on your every word.
Oh my gosh, no. You are also, obviously, we're kind of sisters in what we do too, because I teach college communication classes as well. I know you do too. And so on the side, of course, but that's something that you and I both have also connected on. And so you know the art, you're well-versed in the art of communication and storytelling and speaking and storytelling and presenting. Like, I feel like our work is very similar. And so we're sisters in that as well, because as you know, story is a huge part of communication and training and teachings and presentation and the stage. So I don't have to tell you all of that, because that's where you already live and what you do.
Yeah, I story is very powerful, but I will say this, I don't have the skill quite developed as you do as a writer, and as the ideas that the way they come to you. And now, so before I don't want to go too far, because I could just sit here, honestly, everyone, I could sit here and talk to Katie all day, but let's just catch up on the phone for that. So what I would love for you to share with the audience here, and now if anybody is just tuning in for the first time, hi, my name is Ellie. I'm your host, and we're with my amazing friend and guest and entrepreneur, storyteller, extravaganza coach. She actually does a lot of work with Jim Fortin and Brandon Lucero. And these guys are extraordinary lights. And she has allowed like come into their space and allow them to shine their lights even brighter. And that this is a gift she has. But I would really love for Katie to have this time. Oh, and I got to give a shout out to my girl, Karen. I love you. Also, Karen is tuning in, Katie. I have known her since, I don't know, we were what, 7, 8 years old?
Hi, Karen.
She is amazing. And I'm so glad you're tuning in. But anyone else who's joining in, this is a place where entrepreneurs get to come in and share their story, share their journey, and share what they're working on. And I would really love for you to take control here and share your story, Katie.
Thank you. I think we scheduled this originally to talk about the book that I just released. So yes, I do work in storytelling coaching. I help business owners, entrepreneurs. I also work with companies and corporations. You know, I have a corporate background and a teaching background on how to integrate personal stories into branding and into messaging and content creation. So I work kind of behind the scenes at a higher level with different companies and different entrepreneurs on really, how to tell the story from the perspective of the internal team, going, how do we, which pieces do we put out? How do we look at the story when it comes to, connection and empathy and vulnerability? And how do we position the story when it comes to being more persuasive and needing to sell and market what we do? And a lot of my clients, which I love, end up kind of coming to me when they have stories that involve trauma that they want to share in their brand. And maybe they're feeling hesitant, but they feel a calling, or they feel scared. There's fear around sharing, but they know that their people need to hear their personal story. But they're like, how do I bring this personal thing into my business? Like, how does that even work? And so I kind of come in that way, sort of behind the scenes, to go, here's how we put this together. Here's what we share. Here's what we don't share. Here's how this would look, in a social post in a really small section versus on a podcast. So that's a lot of the work that I do. But in that, I practice what I preach. I am a writer. I wrote an Amazon best-selling novel in 2017. That was a psychological thriller. And then I just released the first in a children's series of audiobooks on my own. I self-published on my own a couple weeks ago. So writing is part of what I do. And obviously, as a storytelling coach, if I'm writing and being creative and honing my craft, that makes me a better coach to help my clients do the same thing. And I take a narrative storytelling approach to my work. So we're talking about the hero's journey and your main characters and your protagonists and antagonists and your conflict, the ingredients we see in books and movies. That's the approach I take to storytelling. So they might seem different, but writing and coaching to me is really intertwined.
I feel that you're correct, because storytelling is a lot like coaching, especially if you're trying to help guide people in what to share, what not to share.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the challenge. Now, you mentioned before that people have a tendency that they want to share some trauma, pain points in their life.
Yes.
And now, if anybody's ever been through anything, they understand the difficulty of this, because you feel like you want to share, but you don't want to share too much. And where's that fine line? And how do you organize that? And how do you bring it back around to the purpose of how this should help someone, but be authentic? Now, that's a big loaded question for you, obviously. And that's what you get paid for. But what I want to get to the point too is, oftentimes people don't know, most people that do this type of coaching or draw these people to them, it's because they've lived through the journey of trauma themselves and have overcome it. And is there a brief way you could just share a little bit about that and then segue? Because I think it would really help people understand, like, this is like, sometimes I think the point is that the trauma sometimes in our lives can help us facilitate and lead to our gifts.
Oh, yeah. This is the Oprah question, Ellie. You're taking on your Oprah hat for this interview. That's a great question. And it's funny because I'm not actually asked that question as often as you would think that I would be. I became really passionate about telling personal stories when well, I'll take a step back and I'll say I'm also passionate about reframing our own personal stories. And so you mentioned another segment of work that I do. I'm a coach for Brandon Lucero, and I'm also a coach for Jim Fortin. And in those, for those amazing brands, they're both doing different but life-changing things in the world. One is more personal transformation, and but there's still business that comes from that too, as you know. And then the other is really focused on messaging and standing out. So in those groups, I work with people on how to overcome and reframe your personal stories. So how do you look at the things that happened in your life? And how do you look at things that have happened in your past? And how do you look at the stories you're telling yourself about the future, right? So there's kind of, when we look at storytelling, for me, there's half of it's the inner transformational work. And then the other half is what goes out on your website, what goes out on your brand, right? And the reason I'm passionate about that is because I have what I call my eat, pray, love moment. And several years ago, it was over a decade ago now, in 2011, the best and worst year of my life, when I found myself on the receiving end of a very young, divorce, and it rocked my world. It was never something I expected. I never expected to be divorced. My parents have been married for, oh gosh, I'm going to lose count now, 44 years. And so that then kind of tumbled me down this hill into this almost decade-long battle, as you know, Ellie, of mental health, struggles with depression and anxiety and panic attacks. And there were a lot of other things that added to that too, right? That's not only because of the divorce, but when things happen to us that we view as, these horrific things, like we view it with shame and anger, and that just builds and builds and builds. And so I had that experience, and I had to reframe that story. And I found myself, it's a little bit dramatic, but I found myself healing on the other side of the world in a graduate study abroad program on a small island off the coast in Thailand. And I had this moment of realizing that I would be okay, and that I had a very happy future ahead of me, and that I was still worthy, and that I still deserved, a happy, fulfilling relationship someday, and that I still mattered. And at that point, I just became really passionate about helping other people realize that doesn't matter what you've gone through, there's always hope, and there's always this, you can always rise. And we're all going to fall down because we're human. But you can always rise. And I don't care what anybody's done to you or said to you, or what you've done or said, like there's always a chance to rise. And everything in my life kind of is formulated around that. I mean, I just believe it so much. And so that's why that's why I'm very passionate about telling powerful personal stories in branding, in business, because that allows you to get that message out to other people. And it totally connects with your business too. And most business owners I know are trying to make a change in the world. So by sharing their story, they can 10x that. But that's why I'm really passionate about storytelling and personal stories. And that's also why I write the stories I do, the fictional stories that I write, because I think it's really important to just know that healing is possible, and you have to own your light. And rising from the ashes is, I think those are timeless human themes. That wasn't very brief.
That actually was well done. Well done, Katie. Because I knew it was a big question, and I thought, whoa, this might be like 2-hour show if I ask this question, but it's an important thing to share, because it's so much of the meat and the heart and soul of who you are now, that you've overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Do we ever fully overcome it? Yes and no. I think we overcome so much of it and let go so much of it. I recently did NLP myself, and I know that you're trained in NLP, correct?
Yes, I'm trained in some level. I'm not certified yet, but yes.
Not certified yet. Okay. But things like this can be very powerful. So, as we get older and we start to overcome things, more tools, I think, become available to us to help us release the things that no longer serve us. And we go through those things for a reason. And I think it's a huge part of why you have this gift now, that you're able to say, because one of the reasons I loved you so much on Periscope is you fought through, you were like a Brene Brown on Periscope to me. And
is Brene watching this? That is so sweet.
I know.
love Brene.
Yeah. Brene, tune in. But I just felt like you on the regular would basically share so that people don't feel shame around things that's, the world. And I think you were so good at sharing it. You didn't hesitate. And I will say something, that there's a communication thing about fast speakers, that when people speak very quickly, it's often because they're highly intelligent, well-read, and know what they're talking about. And you do that so well. And I was always drawn to you on Periscope.
Thank you. That's really encouraging too for me, because I'm working on some things to get back to that, I think on a different platform, but to get back to kind of sharing more behind the scenes of why I'm passionate about storytelling coaching. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And that's an encouraging note for me on content going forward.
Oh, thank you. And speaking of content and writing, I know that you're going to plan to make Firefly in the Storm a series.
Yes.
Now, going back to it, I actually have the Phoenix Project on my bookshelf. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I should bring it down, but now it's behind one of my backdrops and I can't get to it. But it's just honesty in the studio, guys. So, you went from the Phoenix Project, and you mentioned something before, that you had your Eat, Pray, Love moment. And then I want to kind of shift to, okay, so I love Elizabeth Gilbert, right?
Yes.
And you went from Phoenix Project, a psychological thriller, right, on trafficking.
Yes.
Right, human trafficking, to a children's book about an adorable little,
I know,
Firefly. And I feel, honestly, I almost feel like the children's book shares almost more of your of who you are in the journey through the Firefly. In a sense, I feel like that's not really fiction. It's fiction-ish, but based on your personal experience and your growth and the tools you've learned to grow as a person mindfully and such, and in the world. Now, it kind of reminds me of how when I wasn't familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert. I mean, I knew her other books. But I was not familiar with, I loved Big Magic so much. I'm like, thank God. Like, I would think, wow, Phoenix Project's children's audiobook and children's story. And I think you'll publish it into a series. That's what I see. But it's almost like your Big Magic in a way.
Oh, I have not thought of that before.
I mean, just
thank you for that. I love that.
Yeah, just ponder on it. I just feel like it's a thing, and you're putting a gem through Gem and through the children's story. You're able to put a great ideas and concepts out into the world, into the minds of young children when they need to hear it.
Yes, and that was the whole point of the children's series, and it is very different from my other novel, which I still need to finish. That's still a trilogy that I need to finish. This came out now, and I think it was perfect timing. But yeah, the whole point of the children's series is to share. I mean, it's a fictional story, so it's not personal development for kids, but there are personal development tools told through this fictional character who is a firefly, who's adopted by grasshoppers. So she grows up teased and bullied in her village, right? Because nobody understands why she glows. So she's made fun of, right? As you are when you're different, right? And so she learns to embrace her light and own her light, and realizes that she's actually the only one who can actually save, the lives of her classmates at one point in the book. But in order to do that, she has to be who she really is, right? So it is a series. There are more characters and more lessons coming with Gem. little Firefly. But to me, it probably is a little bit more aligned with me, but it's still really fun to tell. It was really fun to write in the pandemic because I needed something creative, and this was so creative to me because it's a children's story. It's short. I don't write short stories, or at least I didn't in the past. And it's so vivid and colorful and fun in my mind, like working with fireflies and grasshoppers and maybe ladybugs or other bugs down the road. And it takes place on an island, and it's really vivid and bright. So it was really fun to create right now. But yeah, I think this is talking about, in really simple ways, some of the tools that I learned to kind of help me through my mental health journey. So yeah, you're right.
I love that. And so how long did it take you? So you did the audiobook, and how long, like, did it just come to you? Like, what was the inspiration? Had you always wanted to do a children's book?
No. No. So I got the idea in 2015 on my honeymoon in Thailand. So I went back to Thailand. So Thailand's very special to me, because you brought up, you made me go the other direction in this story, which loops back to Thailand. You're just Oprah. You're just Oprah, Ellie.
Sorry.
And so
I'll take that compliment.
I am now happily married to my gentleman, as you said. So I got the idea, and I was kind of asleep when it came in, and then I woke up and was like, wait, is this a children's idea? And I told my husband, and he was like, that's interesting. You've never written children's story, but he's like, I love it, obviously. And then I just didn't know what to do with it. And I just let the idea sit for years. And I wish I would have done it sooner, obviously. And so in the pandemic, I kind of set the intention. I'd kind of gotten some other little ideas floating around. And I thought, all right, if this is supposed to come through, I was like, then just come in. Like, if this is real and if this is you, then just come in, like kind of daring it. And then within 4 days, about a week after that happened, so that happened, and I had a really tough love conversation with one of my mentors. And I was like, okay, if this is it, then just come through. And I kind of didn't think it would happen. And then about a week later, in 4 days, the entire story came out. Like, I wrote kind of around the clock.
Wow.
It was I don't remember, like, I was sleeping at weird times and eating at weird times, and I was up in the middle of the night, and it was just, in 4 days it was out. And so then, spent a few months kind of editing it, making it more concise. So it took a little bit to get the format that it's in now, but the story basically came through within 4 days.
Wow.
Once I committed to it.
So you committed to it. Now, you, at the time, you had a full-time job before you maybe went to part-time at that time, or were you full-time at that time still?
At that time still, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You had the full-time job plus all the stuff that you were doing with Jim on the consulting and storytelling coaching on the side. Oh my gosh. And Brandon. Wow.
The coaching for those, they don't run programs all year round. So they're kind of in different sessions. Yeah. So that's not a full-time thing. But
so you did that on their break.
Yes.
Okay, good.
School was out. Yeah. All the stuff that I do.
Wow.
I know.
Wow. Yeah. School was out. Yeah, of course. Yeah. That makes sense. Wow. That's amazing. That's just amazing. Yeah.
And then now
if you really want to do something, you can get it done.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you really can, but also probably a lesson there on creating space to create too, for me. So, yeah, and it is going to be a series. I'm looking at my chalkboard right now. I have titles for the next few. And now that I have this format, and the process of getting through the launch, getting everything up and running. So now that that's all up and running with the first one, I think the next few will come more quickly. But yeah, each one covers a different kind of life lesson, or, bigger theme, bigger concepts for the kids. And then we don't shy away from talking about big concepts, because, in the story, there's terms like self-abuse and terms like feeling sadness and feeling anger and feeling shame. I define those terms, but I'm not going to shy away from those for children, because they experience those things, even if they don't, they can't put the words to it yet. Right.
I love that.
So
I think it's so powerful, and it opens up an opportunity where a child can actually even ask parents more about it. And
yes.
And it creates this conversational moment for parents, which, parents can't just bring up and talk about it, because the kids won't
right.
really understand or know what to tie it to. But if they have a story and a sweet little character in a book
Yeah.
that they care about and identify with. I mean, a lot of times you see in movies and films or other books that there's conflict between different cultures, races, and such, until oftentimes you see, okay, this is going to sound so strange. I loved this movie. My mom was not happy because I cried the whole time in the movie, but it was called The Fox and the Hound.
Yes.
And Fox
Disney.
and Hounds, yeah, Disney. The Fox and the Hound, they're not supposed to be friends.
Right. Right.
You know, they're actually supposed to be hunting one another.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it just reminds me of when children are little and they meet somebody different, they don't really look at all the things about them that are different. They like them for who they are.
Right.
And then they start to honor those uniquenesses and
Mm-hmm.
differences. If somebody says something else, they have a different understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But if they haven't gotten a chance to know the person yet, and they're in a group of people where everybody's the same and the one person's different, and everybody is picking on this person
Mm-hmm.
they're different. Like, for example, Jem,
Mm-hmm.
she's so different from everyone. You know,
Mm-hmm.
she's a beautiful firefly, and it's like the ugly duckling.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's just one of those things where it's all kind of aligned, and if they can learn this in the book, then maybe they could be that one kid to speak out and say,
Right.
hey, that's actually what makes them cool. You know?
Right. Yeah, and that's the whole goal right there. I love the idea of the comparison to the fox and the hound too, because our differences make us unique. And it's when you're little that you start getting judged for being different, right? Like that's when kids are small, when you start hearing stories and you go, wait, like, should I not be this? Should I not be that? Should I not think this or not say, that's when you start getting that feedback from external sources that changes you on the inside, which is, moving you farther away from who you really are and your purpose and all of that. So that's really the overall goal with the series. And it's very new. I just released it as an audiobook, just what I could do when I wanted to get it out immediately. And I'm working on figuring out how the physical book will come into the world, whether it'll be self-published or through published. So, but right now it's audio, and it's got a really beautiful little soundtrack. It's not like an adult audiobook where it's only music at the beginning and the end. It's a gorgeous soundtrack the entire way through with music and nature sounds. And so, yeah, it's been amazing to get feedback from parents on the conversations it's starting in families. And I think we've got a small, mighty community that's just budding here. So I'm really excited.
I love it. Well, I hope you put. You have to explain the map before I ask you the final question here. You have to put Switzerland on your map if you haven't already.
It's on the map. So
okay.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we had downloads in 14 countries in the first week.
Wow! Wow!
I was thrilled.
She has a map. Explain the map. It's really cute.
Yeah, I have a map on the other side of my office wall. You can't see it here. And it's one of those maps where it's all kind of brown. And then when it's usually for travelers. Like if you've traveled to a country, then you would scratch off the surface and it's colored in underneath. And so my vision for this story was, I wanted my vision for the story is to have, little listeners or little readers, listening in from all around the world, because the book is about diversity and differences and inclusivity. And that's coming in more. There's more books coming, Ellie. And I'll tell you that there are new characters and different kinds of bugs that Jem befriends and brings back home. And again, the village is like, this is it's all grasshoppers. And so they're like, wait, who are you? What are you? What's going on? So that's just going to be even more of a theme in future books. And so I got this map for the launch, and every time somebody downloaded it and tagged me and let me know that they were in a different country, I would scratch that off and color it in on the map. So now we have 14 countries colored in.
Wow. That's
so if you end up listening to it and you're somewhere in the world, speaking to Ellie's audience, please tag me and let me know where you are listening to it, because I'd love to add that area to the map.
Yes. And so with that, where can they find you? What's the best place? I know we have your Instagram here. You can find her at Miss Katie Soy.
Yes. And so that's a great place to connect with me. And then you can find the book or more information about the book, including some reviews at my website. So it's katiesoy.com/Firefly stories. You can just go to katiesoy.com and you'll see the Firefly tab at the top too. You can just go there. But
And
I
just
would love,
/Firefly stories. I'm actually going to
yes,
put that
I would
in.
love to hear
It's
from.
right. It's actually right at the top.
Yep.
It's right at the
If you just
top.
go to katiesoy.com, you'll see it. And yeah, again, let us know. Tag me and Ellie if you found it through us, and we update the map, because it's been amazing, and I think it's going to keep getting more colors on it, so that's exciting. Yes.
There it is, Firefly stories. And the one question, everyone, that I ask, I ask my questions. The one question I ask all my guests is, how do you define communication and what does it mean to you?
Oh, to me, communication is really about telling stories, Ellie. I mean, communication, as you and I would define it, sender, receiver, right? Like textbook, definition. But I think in our world nowadays, we have different ways to be sending and receiving, right? It's not just verbal communication. We all know about nonverbal communication. We're getting cues and picking up on clues from other people's body language. But now we're so connected digitally too. So to me, I mean, communication really comes down to, telling stories and one person trying to, connect just a little bit to the heart of the other person in that conversation.
I love that. That's so true. That is so true, Katie. And I just want to say thank you so much for just doing me the honor of being on the show. I've been wanting you to be on for a long time. And it's just so wonderful to see you and have you here and have you share your story and a little bit of Jem's story. It's fantastic. And I want to thank all of the guests for joining us today. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Please reach out to Katie. If you have kids or know someone that have kids, I got it as a gift for my brother-in-law and his daughters. Just check it out. It's such a beautiful story. It's a short story, so it's not, it's going to be shorter than this interview.
Yes.
So with that, thank you so much, Katie. Everyone, I just want to thank you all for joining us again today. I honor you guys. And as always, I wish you communication for success, health, and happiness. Ciao for now.